Detective Zora Williams stares at the lethal injection gurney, counting her final breaths. 24 hours until execution for a murder she didn't commit. Outside the prison, her loyal German Shepherd Apollo howls while digging frantically at a fresh grave. Inside the dirt, evidence that will change everything. Before we dive into this shocking story of injustice and a four-legged hero, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button if you believe animals sometimes understand more than humans do, and subscribe to join our community of truth seekers. Now let's uncover how a loyal German Shepherd became the key to exposing a deadly conspiracy. The fluorescent lights of the Atlanta Police Department headquarters buzzed overhead as Detective Zora Williams reviewed her case notes. At 42, she was a 15-year veteran of the force and one of only 3 black female detectives in the entire precinct. Her colleagues called her the Bloodhound for her relentless pursuit of evidence others missed. The case file spread across her desk contained photos of Judge Richard Hargrove, a 64-year-old white man whose body had been found in his chambers 3 months earlier. A single gunshot to the head, execution style. Judge Hargrove had been notorious throughout Georgia for his harsh sentences against minorities. 3 strikes laws applied unevenly, maximum penalties for minor drug offenses, and an almost perfect record of denying appeals from black defendants. "You sure you want to keep pushing this?" Lieutenant Parker had asked her that morning, his voice low. "The commissioner wants this wrapped up. Gangs or drug dealers? Pick one, file the report, move on." But Zora couldn't move on. The evidence didn't point to either. The judge's calendar showed a meeting with Police Commissioner Walter Pierce just hours before his death. A meeting that had been erased from the official records, but that Zora had recovered from the computer's backup files. More importantly, financial records showed unusual transfers from offshore accounts to both Judge Hargrove and Commissioner Pierce, following certain high-profile cases. "Just following the evidence, sir," she had replied, meeting his gaze steadily. Now, at her desk, she examined the ballistics report again. The bullet that killed Judge Hargrove matched a gun registered to a drug dealer named Marcus Johnson, who had died in police custody 2 years earlier. His gun should have been in evidence storage, but the logs showed it had been checked out by someone using Commissioner Pierce's authorization code. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister, Maya. "Apollo misses you. Working late again?" Zora smiled at the thought of her German Shepherd. She had adopted Apollo 3 years ago after his K-9 handler officer James Wilson died in the line of duty. James had been her friend, one of the few who treated her as an equal from day one. Apollo had been inconsolable after James's death, refusing to work with anyone else until Zora brought him home for what was supposed to be temporary care. They'd bonded immediately, 2 souls who understood loss. "Be home soon," she texted back. "Just finishing up." The elevator door opened, and she looked up to see Commissioner Walter Pierce striding toward her desk, flanked by 2 internal affairs officers. At 58, Pierce maintained the physique of a man 20 years younger, a former college football star who'd traded his helmet for a badge and risen through the ranks with remarkable speed. His silver hair and tailored suits projected authority, and his political connections made him untouchable. "Detective Williams," he said, his southern drawl pronounced despite 3 decades in Atlanta. "I've been reviewing your caseload." "Sir?" she acknowledged, subtly sliding the financial records under a folder. "I understand you've been making inquiries about my meetings with Judge Hargrove." The office fell silent. Other detectives suddenly became intensely interested in their computer screens. "Just following standard procedure, sir. Checking alibis, establishing timelines." His smile never reached his eyes. "Of course. Thoroughness is admirable." He glanced at the internal affairs officers. "Unfortunately, IA has some concerns about evidence in your vehicle." "My vehicle?" Zora stood up, confusion washing over her. "Detective Zora Williams," the older IA officer said formally, "you're under arrest for the murder of Judge Richard Hargrove." The second officer produced handcuffs while the first continued reading her rights. Commissioner Pierce watched with something like satisfaction in his eyes. "This is insane," Zora protested as heads turned throughout the office. I've been investigating his murder for months, which gave you perfect cover to plant false leads, Commissioner Pierce said loudly enough for everyone to hear. We found the murder weapon in your trunk, Detective, and financial records showing payments to offshore accounts. Did you think we wouldn't notice Judge Hargrove was investigating your father's old cases before you killed him? The handcuffs closed around her wrists with a decisive click. Her fellow detectives watched in silence as she was led away, not one stepping forward to object. Only her partner, James Rodriguez, looked stricken, half rising from his desk before another detective pulled him back down. "Call Maya," Zora shouted to him as the elevator doors closed. "Tell her to take care of Apollo." The trial was a travesty. The judge, an old hunting buddy of Commissioner Pierce, refused to recuse himself despite the obvious conflict of interest. The public defender assigned to her case was fresh out of law school and terrified of making enemies. Evidence that might have cleared her name mysteriously disappeared from the evidence room. Witnesses who might have corroborated her alibi suddenly couldn't remember where they were that night. The prosecution presented a damning case: the murder weapon found in her car trunk with her fingerprints, bank transfers to her account that she couldn't explain, and emails supposedly from her computer threatening Judge Hargrove over his investigation into old cases her father had worked on before his death. Her fellow officers testified that she had been obsessed with Judge Hargrove, that she had made threatening comments about him, that she had requested files related to his previous cases without authorization. Not one stood up for her character or her 15 years of unblemished service. The jury, 11 white members and one elderly Asian man who slept through most of the testimony, deliberated for less than 2 hours before returning a guilty verdict. The judge, citing the heinous nature of a law enforcement officer murdering a judge, sentenced her to death, an almost unprecedented penalty that sent shockwaves through the legal community. Maya sat in the courtroom, tears streaming down, her face holding onto Apollo's leash so tightly her knuckles turned white. The German shepherd whined, pulling toward Zora as she was led away, his intelligent eyes fixed on her face. "I'm innocent," Zora shouted as court officers dragged her toward the door. "Pierce framed me. Look into his connection to Hargrove." Outside the courthouse, the media frenzy had already begun. "Black cop gone bad," screamed the headlines. "Revenge killing," suggested others. Not one mentioned the racial dynamics at play, the rushed nature of the trial, or the conflicting evidence. Commissioner Pierce gave solemn interviews about the betrayal of the badge and promised a full investigation into how someone like Zora had slipped through the department's screening. Appeals were filed and rushed through the system with unprecedented speed. Each judge in turn refused to consider new evidence or procedural complaints. Within 18 months, all appeals had been exhausted. The governor, facing a tight re-election campaign and unwilling to appear soft on crime, declined to intervene. Zora Williams, decorated detective and daughter of a slain police officer, was scheduled to die by lethal injection in 30 days. The system that she had served faithfully had betrayed her in the most complete way possible, and no one with the power to help her was willing to listen. Georgia State Penitentiary loomed against the gray sky, a fortress of concrete and steel housing the state's most dangerous criminals. And now, Detective Zora Williams. The women's death row section occupied the oldest wing of the prison. Cells, barely 8 by 10 feet, with small windows set high in the wall that offered a thin slice of sky, but no view of the ground below. Zora's first night had been a symphony of screams, clanging metal, and lewd suggestions from both inmates and guards. She lay on the thin mattress, staring at the ceiling, wondering how her life had collapsed so completely. 15 years of service, erased, her reputation destroyed. And for what? Because she'd gotten too close to the truth about Commissioner Pierce and Judge Hargrove? Well, if it ain't the cop," a guard named Tanner drawled as he passed her cell during morning count. "How's it feel to be on the other side, Williams? Not so high and mighty now, are you?" Zora said nothing, keeping her face impassive. She'd learned quickly that reactions were currency in prison, and she wasn't giving anything away for free. "Got some fan mail," Tanner continued, sliding an envelope through the bars. "Death threats, probably. Cops who kill judges ain't popular with nobody." The letter was from Maya. Zora's hands trembled as she opened it. "Z, I'm fighting for you. Every day, every way I know how, Apollo misses you terribly. He sits by the door waiting and nobody can tell him you're not coming home. I've hired a new attorney with what's left of Mom's insurance money. Don't give up, I haven't. Love, M. Inside was a photo of Apollo, his intelligent brown eyes seeming to look directly into the camera, head slightly tilted the way he did when he was trying to understand something complicated. Zora pressed the photo to her chest and allowed herself 5 minutes of tears before wiping her face and tucking the picture under her mattress. The days blurred together. Wake-up call at 5 a.m., breakfast at 6. 1 hour in the yard at 10, separate from other inmates because death row prisoners were kept isolated. Lunch at noon, more cell time, dinner at 5, lights out at 9. The monotony was its own form of torture. Twice a week she was allowed phone calls. Maya updated her on the protests forming outside the governor's mansion, the online petitions gathering signatures, the few journalists starting to question the speed of her conviction. None of it seemed to be making a difference to those in power. "Your sister's making quite a stir," Officer Sarah Donovan commented one day as she escorted Zora back from the shower. Donovan was new, younger than most of the guards, with strawberry blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun. "Got herself on the news arguing with the commissioner." "That sounds like Maya," Zora said, the first personal comment she'd made to any guard. "She always did have more courage than sense." "Commissioner Pierce seems pretty invested in keeping you in here," Donovan observed quietly. "Makes a person wonder why." Before Zora could respond, they reached her cell, and Donovan's professional mask slipped back into place. But the moment lingered in Zora's mind, the first hint that someone in authority might have doubts about her guilt. That night, she dreamed of her father. Thomas Williams had been one of Atlanta's first black detectives in the 1980s, breaking barriers and enduring daily harassment with quiet dignity. He'd been killed when Zora was 16, allegedly by gang members retaliating for a drug bust. The case had been closed quickly. Too quickly, her mother had always insisted. In the dream, her father stood in Judge Hargrove's chambers, pointing at something on the desk that Zora couldn't quite see. "It was there all along," he said. "You just weren't looking in the right place." She woke with a start, the words echoing in her mind. What had she missed? What evidence had she overlooked? She began mentally reconstructing the crime scene, visualizing Judge Hargrove's chambers piece by piece. The judge's computer, his calendar, the hidden files she'd discovered showing meetings with Commissioner Pierce, the financial records indicating possible bribes. But there must have been something else, something that had made Pierce panic enough to frame her so elaborately. 2 months into her incarceration, a riot broke out in the general population section of the women's prison. Despite being in a separate wing, Zora could hear the chaos, screaming, the sound of breaking glass, the dull thud of riot shields as correction officers responded. Then her cell door slid open unexpectedly. "Officer," Donovan stood there, keys in hand, panic on her face. "Some of them broke through to this section," she said urgently. "We need to move you to secure holding." As they hurried down the corridor, 3 inmates appeared at the far end, makeshift weapons in hand. They spotted Donovan's uniform and charged. "Run!" Zora shouted, but Donovan froze in terror. Years of police training kicked in. Zora pushed the guard behind her and faced the attackers. The first swung a sock filled with batteries. Zora ducked under it and delivered a precise strike to the woman's solar plexus, dropping her instantly. The second slashed with a sharpened toothbrush. Zora caught her wrist and twisted until the weapon clattered to the floor. The third attacker took one look at her fallen companions and fled. "Come on," Zora said, pulling Donovan to her feet. "Security office is this way." "How did you—" Donovan began. 15 years on the force, Zora reminded her, "and my father made sure I could handle myself long before that." They reached the security office where other guards had barricaded themselves with several prisoners from protected custody. When order was finally restored hours later, the warden himself came to thank Zora for protecting Officer Donovan. "Doesn't change your sentence," he said gruffly, "but I'll make sure you get extra commissary this month." It was a small thing, But in prison, small things were everything. More importantly, the incident changed Officer Donovan's perception of her. The guard began stopping by her cell regularly, sometimes bringing an extra dessert or a magazine. Small kindnesses that made the unbearable slightly more bearable. "I looked into your case," Donovan said quietly one evening, pretending to check something on her clipboard. "Found some weird things, like how the evidence that convicted you didn't show up in the initial inventory of your car. Because it was planted later," Zora said. "And 3 other black officers who were investigating corruption cases died or got imprisoned in the last 5 years. All under different circumstances, but all with connections to cases involving Commissioner Pierce's friends." Zora's pulse quickened. "You believe me?" Donovan glanced around nervously. "Let's just say I've got questions. Big ones. But I need to be careful. I've got kids who need their mom to stay employed." "I understand. Thank you for even considering the possibility." The next day, Commissioner Pierce himself came to visit. Zora was escorted to the visitation room, hands and feet shackled per death row protocol. Pierce sat at the metal table, immaculate in a tailored suit, a picture of concerned authority for the guards observing them. "Detective Williams," he greeted her as though they were still colleagues. "You're looking, well, considering." "What, do you want Pierce?" He smiled thinly. "Just checking on a former officer, showing the department's ongoing concern." "Save it for the cameras. We both know why I'm here." He leaned forward, voice dropping. "Your sister's making quite a spectacle of herself. That dog too, bringing him to protests, getting him on the news. Quite the media sensation. Cop's dog waits faithfully while she sits on death row. Touching. Ice formed in Zora's stomach. Leave my family out of this. Oh, I'd like to, truly. But Maya seems determined to insert herself into matters that don't concern her. It would be tragic if something happened to her. Or that dog she's so fond of. German shepherds get stolen all the time, you know. Or hit. By cars." Zora lunged across the table, only to be yanked back by her chains. Guards rushed in, restraining her roughly. Pierce stood calmly, straightening his tie. "I see prison hasn't improved your temperament. Perhaps you should focus on making peace with your fate, Zora. Some things simply can't be changed no matter how loudly your sister protests or how pathetically your dog waits by the door." As the guards dragged her back to her cell, Zora's mind raced. Pierce wouldn't have come personally just to threaten her unless he was worried. Maya and Apollo must be getting close to something that frightened him enough to show his hand. That night, she wrote to Maya, warning her to be careful, but also urging her to keep digging. "Watch over Apollo," she wrote. "He sees things we miss." Little did she know how prophetic those words would prove to be. "Special visitation today, Williams," Officer Donovan announced, unlocking Zora's cell door 3 weeks later. "Your sister pulled some strings with that new program for death row inmates." Zora's heart leaped. "The animal therapy visits? Apollo's eye? Coming?" Donovan nodded, a small smile breaking through her professional demeanor. "Warden approved it yesterday. You've got 30 minutes in the South Yard. Private visit." The South Yard was a small, fenced area usually reserved for high-risk prisoners who couldn't mix with the general population. Today, it was empty except for a metal bench bolted to the concrete and a water bowl placed nearby. Zora sat waiting, hands fidgeting in her lap, eyes fixed on the door. When it finally opened, Apollo burst through, a tan and black blur racing across the yard. The German shepherd skidded to a halt in front of Zora, whining with excitement, his entire body wiggling with the force of his wagging tail. "Apollo!" Zora dropped to her knees, burying her face in his fur as he licked her face frantically. For the first time in months, she laughed, a real, genuine sound that surprised even her. Maya followed more slowly, wiping tears from her eyes as she watched the reunion. "Told you he missed you." The sisters embraced while Apollo circled them, impatiently nudging their legs with his nose. "He hasn't been the same without you," Maya said, sitting on the bench. "Barely eats, paces all night. The only time he gets excited is when we go to the protests. It's like he knows we're fighting for you." Pierce came to see me, Zora said quietly, keeping her voice low despite the yard being free of other prisoners or guards. He threatened you both. Maya's expression hardened. Let him try something. We're making progress, Z. That new lawyer found inconsistencies in the chain of custody for the evidence in your car. And we've been looking into other cases where Pierce might have framed people. There's a pattern. Apollo had stopped circling and was standing rigid, nose pointed toward the far corner of the yard. He growled low in his throat, the sound Zora recognized from his police training days, the alert for something suspicious. What is it, boy? Zora followed his gaze but saw nothing unusual. Just the corner of the yard where it met the outer wall of the prison. Apollo whined, looking back at Zora, then again at the corner. He took a few steps toward it, then returned to her, as if trying to lead her there. He's been doing this at home, too, Maya said. Staring at walls, growling at nothing. The vet says it might be anxiety from missing you. But Zora knew Apollo's signals from when he'd been a working K9. This wasn't anxiety. This was detection behavior. There's something there, she murmured. Or there was. Before she could investigate further, Officer Donovan appeared at the door. Time's up, Williams. Apollo resisted when Maya tried to lead him away, planting his feet and whining pitifully. It's okay, boy, Zora assured him, fighting back tears. I'll see you again soon. The German shepherd stared into her eyes, and Zora had the unsettling feeling he was trying to tell her something important. Something she couldn't understand. That night, Maya returned home exhausted from the emotional visit. Apollo seemed agitated, pacing the apartment and pausing occasionally to stare intently at the walls, as if he could see through them to some distant point. What's wrong, buddy? Maya asked, kneeling beside him. What are you trying to tell me? The German shepherd whined, head tilted in that expressive way that had always made Zora joke he was almost human. 2 days later, Maya woke to find Apollo gone. The back door of her ground-floor apartment was open, the screen pushed out. Panicked, she called his name, searched the neighborhood, and finally registered him as missing with local shelters and veterinarians. He's microchipped, she explained tearfully to the animal control officer who took her report. He's never run away before. He's a trained police dog, former K9 unit. Those shepherd types are smart, the officer said sympathetically. If he wants to go somewhere, a screen door won't stop him. We'll keep an eye out. For 2 agonizing days, there was no sign of Apollo. Maya couldn't bear to tell Zora during their weekly phone call, instead making excuses about why the dog wasn't barking in the background as usual. Then, on the 3rd morning, her phone rang at 5 a.m. Ms. Williams? This is security at Riverview. Construction. We've got your dog here. Apollo, is he okay? He's fine, ma'am, but he's caused quite a situation. He's been digging up our site for the past 2 nights. We finally managed to contain him, but he's pretty determined about something. The construction site was part of a new development being built on land that had once belonged to Judge Hargrove's estate. After his death, his widow had sold the property to developers who were building luxury condominiums. When Maya arrived, she found Apollo in a makeshift pen, muddy from head to toe but uninjured. The moment he saw her, he began barking urgently. He showed up 2 nights ago, the security guard explained, digging in the same spot for hours. We chased him off, but he came back last night with a vengeance. Dug a hole nearly 4 feet deep before we could catch him. Can I see where he was digging? Maya asked. The guard led her to a section of disturbed earth near what had once been the estate's garden house. Yellow construction tape now surrounded the hole Apollo had created. Probably smelled a raccoon or something, the guard suggested. But Maya knew better. Apollo had been a cadaver dog in his K9 days, trained to find human remains. If he was digging this obsessively, he'd found something significant. I'd like to take him home now, she said, keeping her voice casual. I'm so sorry for the trouble. That night, after the construction crew had left, Maya returned with Apollo. The German shepherd led her straight to the hole, whining anxiously. Using a flashlight and garden trowel she'd brought, Maya continued the excavation where Apollo had left off. 3 feet down, the trowel clinked against something solid. Not bone as she'd feared, but plastic. Carefully, she uncovered a waterproof case containing a burner phone, sealed in a plastic bag with silica gel packets to keep out moisture. "Good boy, Apollo," she whispered, patting his head. "Good boy." Are you shocked by what Apollo just discovered? Comment number 1 if you think animals have instincts that humans can't even begin to understand. And if you believe Commissioner Pierce is about to get what's coming to him, smash that like button right now. What secrets do you think are hiding on that buried phone? And what lengths will Pierce go to in order to keep those secrets buried? Subscribe now to find out as this incredible story continues. Apollo suddenly growled, ears perked toward the entrance to the construction site. Headlights swept across the property as a vehicle pulled in. "Night security," Maya hissed, quickly pocketing the phone and grabbing Apollo's collar. "We've got to go." They slipped out through a gap in the fence just as security guards began their rounds, flashlights probing the darkness. Once safely back in her car, Maya examined the phone. It was powered off, the battery likely dead after being buried for so long. She would need to charge it carefully. Evidence this sensitive had to be handled properly. Meanwhile, Commissioner Pierce was receiving an alert from the security company monitoring the construction site. "Disturbance at the Hargrove property again, sir," his assistant reported. "Security camera caught a woman and what looks like the same dog from previous nights." Pierce's face hardened. "Send someone out there tomorrow. I want that entire area filled with concrete immediately. Tell them it's a foundation issue that needs reinforcement." "But sir, the building plans don't call for—" "Just do it," Pierce snapped, "and find out who that woman was." The next morning, Maya charged the phone just enough to power it on without potentially damaging any data. The screen lit up, revealing an encryption lock. This wasn't just any burner phone. It was protected by serious security measures. "What have you found, Apollo?" she whispered, scratching behind the German shepherd's ears as he sat proudly beside her. "And who did it belong to?" Maya stared at the encrypted phone, frustration building. 3 weeks remained until Zora's scheduled execution, and this device potentially held the key to her freedom. If only Maya could access its contents. "I need help," she admitted to Apollo, who watched her with those intelligent eyes that seemed to understand everything. "But who can I trust?" The answer came reluctantly. Detective James Rodriguez, Zora's former partner. He had attended the trial but hadn't testified either for or against Zora. He'd visited her once in prison, then never again. Maya had always wondered if he believed in her sister's innocence. She found him at a small bar near the precinct, nursing a whiskey alone in a corner booth. "Detective Rodriguez," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. He looked up, recognition and guilt flashing across his face. "Maya Williams, I was wondering when you'd come find me. I need your help." He gave a bitter laugh. "No, you don't. I failed your sister. Couldn't save her then. Can't help her now." "Apollo found something," Maya said, leaning forward. "At Judge Hargrove's old property." James's eyes narrowed. "The dog, what did he find?" "A phone, encrypted, buried where no one was supposed to find it." "Walk away, Maya," James said, his voice dropping. "Pierce has eyes and ears everywhere." "The day after your sister was arrested, my teenage daughter's car was run off the road. Accident," they said. "Next day, my son got jumped walking home from school. Another accident. Message received. I stay quiet. My kids stay safe." "My sister is going to die in 3 weeks," Maya hissed. "For something she didn't do. You know it. I know it. And this phone might prove it." James drained his whiskey. "I'm sorry, truly, but I can't help you." As Maya stood to leave, Apollo, who had been waiting outside, somehow slipped his leash from where she'd tied it and bounded into the bar. Before the bartender could object, the German shepherd reached James and placed his paw directly on the detective's knee, staring intently into his eyes. James froze. "That's uncanny. He used to do that with Zora when he wanted her to follow him to evidence." "He found the phone, James. He knew exactly where to dig." "That's not coincidence." The detective stared at Apollo for a long moment, then sighed heavily. "Bring the phone to my house tomorrow morning. Come around back. No cars on the street." And Maya, if anyone asks, we never spoke. The next day, James examined the encrypted phone in his garage, equipment spread across a workbench. Military-grade encryption, he muttered. We'd need a tech expert from the FBI to crack this properly. We don't have that kind of time, Maya reminded him. No, but... He paused, thinking. There's another way in. Most of these secure phones still require biometric authentication as backup, fingerprint or facial recognition. So we need Judge Hargrove's fingerprint? From a man 2 years dead? James nodded grimly. Morgue records. They would have taken prints during autopsy. Standard procedure. Can you access those records? Not directly, not anymore. But I know someone who might be able to help. That evening, they met in the parking garage beneath the county medical examiner's office. Dr. Eliza Chen, the assistant medical examiner, looked nervously over her shoulder as she handed James a flash drive. I could lose my license for this, she whispered. But the records are strange, James. Someone's been in the system. Hargrove's autopsy file has been modified multiple times in the past year. Modified how? Details changed. Cause of death originally noted powder burn suggesting close range. Later edited to remove that finding. Time of death adjusted by 2 hours. And the strange thing is, the user credentials belong to people who weren't even working those days. James pocketed the flash drive. Thank you, Eliza. I owe you. Just find out what's going on. Something feels wrong about this whole case. Back at James's garage, they discovered another problem. The fingerprint files on the flash drive had been corrupted. Deliberately, it seemed. Dead end, James groaned, slamming his fist on the workbench. Not necessarily, Maya said slowly. The morgue must keep backup files, right? For legal purposes, official backups would be in the same system. Likely corrupted too. What about unofficial backups? The next day, they returned to the medical examiner's office during the busiest time, shift change, when the day staff was leaving and the night staff arriving. Amid the confusion, they slipped in through a service entrance using Dr. Chen's borrowed keycard. The morgue was eerily quiet, the overhead fluorescents casting a harsh glow over stainless steel surfaces. James kept watch at the door while Maya searched through file cabinets. Nothing, she reported after 10 tense minutes. All digital now, I guess. Can I help you find something? A voice asked from the shadows. Maya jumped, turning to find a young black woman in scrubs watching her curiously. Her name tag read, Aisha Johnson, forensic assistant. I'm sorry, Maya began, mind racing for a plausible excuse. I was looking for... You're Zora Williams's sister, Aisha interrupted. I recognize you from the news. Maya tensed, ready to run, but Aisha raised her hands in a calming gesture. I've been following the case. Something's not right about it. The rushed autopsy, the missing evidence. She hesitated, then continued in a lower voice. I keep my own records. Not officially, of course, but when I noticed inconsistencies in Judge Hargrove's file, I made copies. Just in case. Inconsistencies like what? James asked, moving closer. Like the fact that the judge had defensive wounds on his hands that disappeared from the official report, or that the bullet trajectory didn't match a shooter of Detective Williams's height. Aisha glanced nervously at the door. I can help you, but not here. Meet me at Westside Coffee after my shift. 10 p.m. Hours later, in a quiet corner of the nearly empty coffee shop, Aisha slid a USB drive across the table. Everything I saved, including the original fingerprint scans. Why are you helping us? Maya asked. Aisha's expression darkened. My brother was sentenced by Judge Hargrove. 10 years for a first-time offense that should have gotten probation. Pattern I noticed in the judge's sentencing. White kids got breaks, black kids got the book thrown at them. So when I saw Detective Williams getting railroaded for his murder, I knew something stank. Back in James's garage, they loaded the fingerprint file onto a specialized reader James had borrowed from the evidence tech lab. The phone required a complete fingerprint, all 5 fingers, to unlock. Moment of truth, James said, pressing the digital fingerprint overlay against the phone's sensor. For a heart-stopping moment, Nothing happened. Then the screen lit up, encryption falling away to reveal the phone's contents. "We're in," Maya breathed, feeling Apollo press against her leg, as if he too understood the significance of the moment. The phone contained hundreds of photos, voice recordings, and text messages, a digital insurance policy buried by someone who feared for their life. As they scrolled through, the truth began to emerge in horrifying clarity. Photos showed Commissioner Pierce at crime scenes before bodies were officially discovered. Voice recordings captured conversations between Pierce and Judge Hargrove discussing how to handle witnesses in ongoing corruption cases. Text messages outlined payments to officers willing to plant evidence or look the other way. "This is it," James whispered, his face pale. "This is why Zora was framed. She wasn't just getting close to the truth about Hargrove's murder. She was about to uncover their entire operation." "We need to get this to the governor immediately," Maya said. "Not yet," James cautioned. "This is bigger than we thought. We need to understand exactly what we're dealing with before we move. And we need backup copies of everything. Insurance against accidents." Neither of them noticed the unmarked police car that had followed Aisha from the coffee shop, or the officer now watching James's house from across the street, phone to his ear as he reported back to Commissioner Pierce. The files on the phone revealed a conspiracy more extensive than Maya or James had imagined. Text messages, voice recordings, and photos painted a disturbing picture of corruption, reaching into every corner of Atlanta's justice system. Operation Cleanup, they called it, a systematic effort to eliminate witnesses, intimidate whistleblowers, and bury evidence of judicial corruption that had been ongoing for nearly a decade. Judge Hargrove was planning to flip, James realized, as they reviewed a series of increasingly panicked messages from the judge to an unknown federal contact. He was going to turn state's evidence against Pierce and the others. So Pierce had him killed, Maya concluded, then framed Zora because she was getting too close to figuring it out. Apollo lay at their feet, occasionally raising his head when they spoke in agitated tones, as if following the conversation. "There are names here," James said, scrolling through a password-protected file they'd managed to open. "People who might know details about the conspiracy. 3 in particular that Hargrove mentioned repeatedly as potential witnesses. The first name was Catherine Martinez, a court clerk who had worked in Judge Hargrove's office for 15 years. "We should talk to her immediately," Maya said. James made some calls, using old contacts to locate Catherine's address. They drove there the next morning, only to find police cars and an ambulance outside her suburban home. "What happened?" James asked a neighbor watching from behind the police tape. "Terrible accident," the elderly woman replied. "Carbon monoxide leak overnight. They found her this morning when she didn't show up for work. Such a tragedy." Maya and James exchanged grim looks. The timing was too convenient to be coincidence. "They're eliminating loose ends," James murmured as they returned to his car. "Pierce must know we found something." The second name on their list was William Parker, a former police officer who'd left the force under mysterious circumstances 3 years earlier. His last known address was a homeless shelter downtown, but when they arrived, the staff hadn't seen him in months. "Bill doesn't stay here anymore," a volunteer told them. "Lives in a camp down by the river, keeps to himself mostly." They found the camp after hours of searching, a collection of tents and makeshift shelters hidden in the wooded area along the Chattahoochee River. Apollo's training proved invaluable, the German shepherd leading them unerringly through the undergrowth, until they reached a small, surprisingly neat campsite set apart from the others. A gaunt man with a gray beard emerged from a tent at their approach, a baseball bat in hand. Despite the years and hardship evident on his face, Maya recognized him from photos as William Parker. "Whatever you're selling, I ain't buying," he called, keeping the bat visible. "We're not here to cause trouble," James replied, hands raised to show he was unarmed. "We're looking into Judge Hargrove's murder and Commissioner Pierce's involvement." Parker's expression changed instantly. "You stupid or suicidal? Nobody talks about that and lives long. My sister is on death row for a murder she didn't commit," Maya said, stepping forward. "She'll be executed in 18 days unless we can prove Pierce framed her." Parker studied them for a long moment, then gestured toward 2 camp chairs. Sit, and keep that dog close. Don't need him wandering off and drawing attention. Over the next hour, Parker revealed that he'd been Pierce's partner years ago, before Pierce's meteoric rise through the ranks. He'd witnessed Pierce plant evidence, intimidate witnesses, and worse. When Parker had threatened to report him, his life had unraveled with frightening speed, false accusations, a failed drug test he knew was rigged, and finally, dismissal from the force. "I knew too much to kill outright," Parker explained. "Too many connections, too many people would ask questions, so they destroyed my credibility instead. Who believes a homeless ex-cop with a drug problem? But you were near Judge Hargrove's chambers the night he was killed," James prompted. Parker nodded, reaching into his tent to retrieve a small electronic device. "I've been documenting everything for years. Had a camera hidden across from the courthouse. Security is focused on who enters the building, not who watches from outside. The night Hargrove died, I caught this." He pressed play on a small, battered digital camera. The night vision footage showed the service entrance of the courthouse. The timestamp read 11:42 p.m., nearly 2 hours after the official time of death, in the coroner's report. A figure in a police uniform exited, face obscured by a hat but body language unmistakably tense. He glanced around furtively before hurrying to an unmarked car. "That's not Williams," James said immediately. "Build is all wrong. That's a man, at least 6 feet tall." "I think it's Reynolds," Parker said. "Pierce's personal enforcer, does all his dirty work." "Why didn't you come forward with this?" Maya demanded. Parker gave a harsh laugh. "And end. Up like all the other witnesses who mysteriously died before testifying. I've stayed alive this long by keeping my head down and my insurance policy secure." "Insurance policy?" "Evidence. Lots of it. Buried where only I can find it." He glanced at Apollo, who had been watching him intently. "Though your dog there, seems like he might have the nose for it too." As if understanding, Apollo stood and moved to Parker's side, sniffing the ground near his feet. "Smart animal," Parker observed. "Military trained?" "Police K-9, Maya explained. "He belonged to an officer who died. My sister adopted him." Parker considered this, then made a decision. "I've been waiting for the right moment, the right people. Maybe that's you. Come back tomorrow at dawn. Bring shovels. Your dog might help us find what we're looking for faster." As they prepared to leave, Parker grabbed James's arm. "Be careful. Men in police uniforms have been searching the camps recently, asking questions, looking for me. If Pierce suspects you're talking to me, you're already in danger." That night, Maya couldn't sleep. The weight of what they'd discovered, combined with the rapidly approaching execution date, made her mind race with both hope and fear. Apollo sensed her anxiety, staying close, occasionally placing his head on her lap as if to reassure her. At 4 a.m., they headed back to Parker's camp. The pre-dawn darkness was thick under the tree canopy, but Apollo moved confidently, leading them back to the same spot. As they approached, however, the German shepherd suddenly stopped, hackles rising, a low growl rumbling in his throat. "Something's wrong," Maya whispered. James drew his off-duty weapon. "Stay behind me." Parker's campsite had been destroyed. The tent was slashed to ribbons, his few possessions scattered and broken. Of Parker himself, there was no sign except a disturbing amount of blood soaking into the dirt floor of the tent. "We're too late," James said grimly. Apollo, however, was behaving strangely. Instead of investigating the blood or the tent, he was circling the perimeter of the camp, nose to the ground, moving in an increasingly tight spiral toward a particular tree several yards away. "He's onto something," Maya said, following the dog. At the base of the tree, Apollo began to dig, throwing dirt aside with powerful paws. James joined in with a camp shovel they'd brought, and 6 inches down, they hit something solid, a waterproof hunting case, the kind used to protect valuables in the wilderness. Inside was a flash drive, sealed in multiple layers of plastic with a handwritten note. "If you're reading this, I'm probably dead. Make it count. Parker." As they secured the flash drive, Voices and flashlights appeared in the distance, moving toward the camp. "We've got to go," James urged. "Now!" They retreated into the underbrush just as several men in police uniforms entered the clearing. From their hiding place, Maya could hear their conversation. "Subject's been removed to the secondary location. No sign of the evidence he claimed to have. Pierce wants the entire area searched. The woman and her dog were spotted nearby yesterday. What about Rodriguez? He's been asking questions at the station. He's being handled separately. Let's finish here and report back." Maya and James exchanged alarmed glances. They waited until the search party moved to another section of the woods, then made their escape, Apollo leading them along a path that avoided the searchers. Once safely back in James's car, they examined the flash drive. It contained videos, audio recordings, and documents meticulously organized and annotated. A comprehensive record of corruption, spanning 15 years. Pierce's fingerprints were all over it, both literally and figuratively. "This is enough to blow the whole thing wide open," James said, scrolling through the files. "We need to get this to the FBI or the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Someone outside Pierce's influence." "We need to move fast," Maya agreed. "They know we're onto them now." What they didn't know was just how close the danger really was, or that their next move would lead them directly into a trap set by those with everything to lose. Do you believe that Apollo's incredible sense of smell is the key to saving Zora? Comment number 1 if you think this loyal German Shepherd deserves a medal for his detective work. And if you're on the edge of your seat wondering what will happen next, smash that like button right now. Will Maya and James get the evidence to the right authorities in time? Or is there a traitor waiting to betray them? Subscribe to find out as this shocking story continues. With the flash drive secured and time running short, Maya and James needed to get the evidence to someone with the authority to stop Zora's execution. After careful consideration, they decided on District Attorney Elizabeth Chen, whose reputation for integrity made her seem like their best hope within the system. "She's not part of Pierce's inner circle," James explained as they drove to the DA's office. "And she's been pushing police reform since she took office last year. If anyone will listen, it's her." Maya wasn't so sure. "Can we trust anyone connected to the department at this point?" "We don't have much choice. We need someone with the power to get an emergency stay of execution, and we need them now." Apollo sat in the back seat, unusually quiet but alert, his eyes tracking movement outside. The car windows. District Attorney Chen's assistant initially tried to turn them away, citing her packed schedule. But James flashed his badge and mentioned evidence in the Williams case that needed immediate attention. Minutes later, they were ushered into Chen's spacious corner office. Elizabeth Chen was a formidable woman in her early 50s, with sharp eyes behind stylish glasses and a reputation as one of the toughest prosecutors in the state. She listened without interruption as they presented their evidence: the encrypted phone, Parker's flash drive, and the testimony of the forensic assistant. "This is disturbing," she finally said, removing her glasses to rub the bridge of her nose. "If even half of what you're showing me is accurate, we're looking at the biggest police corruption scandal in Georgia history. Then you'll help us?" Maya asked, hope rising in her chest for the first time in months. "I need time to review everything properly. Chain of custody issues, authentication of digital evidence. We have to make sure this will stand up in court." Chen glanced at her calendar. "I can clear my afternoon. Come back at 4 and we'll discuss next steps." As they left the DA's office, Apollo suddenly balked at the doorway, planting his feet and refusing to move. "What's wrong, boy?" Maya asked, concerned by the dog's unusual behavior. James studied the German Shepherd's rigid posture. He used to do this during building searches, when he sensed something dangerous ahead. "But we're leaving the danger behind, aren't we?" Maya said, gently coaxing Apollo forward. James wasn't so sure. "I hope so." They spent the next few hours at a nearby diner, reviewing their evidence and planning their next moves. James seemed increasingly distracted, checking his phone frequently and scanning the street outside. "Something feels off," he finally admitted. Chen accepted everything too easily. No skepticism, no questions about where we got the evidence. "Isn't that good? She believes us." "Maybe. Or maybe she's giving someone time to prepare. He stood abruptly. I need to make a call. Watch Apollo. I'll be right back. While James stepped outside to use his phone, Maya scrolled through news updates on her laptop. A small item caught her attention, a press release announcing a private meeting between District Attorney Chen and Police Commissioner Pierce, scheduled for that afternoon to discuss departmental cooperation initiatives. Her blood ran cold. The meeting wasn't on Chen's calendar when they'd seen it in her office. James returned, his expression grim. My contact at the courthouse says Chen and Pierce have been close allies for years. She was his personal attorney, before becoming DA. We've walked into a trap, Maya realized. We just handed all our evidence to Pierce's accomplice. They rushed back to Maya's apartment to retrieve the backup copies they'd made, only to find the door ajar and the place ransacked. Maya's laptop was gone, along with all the external drives and printed documents related to Zora's case. They knew exactly what to look for, James said, surveying the destruction. Apollo growled and dashed toward the bedroom. Maya followed to find the window open, curtains billowing in the breeze. The intruder's exit point. At least they didn't get everything, Maya said, pulling up a loose floorboard beneath her bed to reveal a small fireproof box. Inside was one last backup drive, along with Zora's spare service weapon that Maya had kept hidden after her arrest. A police siren wailed in the distance, growing closer. We need to go, James urged. They'll be coming for us next. They barely made it out the back door before police cars screeched to a halt outside the apartment building. As they cut through neighboring yards, Maya saw officers with weapons drawn entering her building. Where can we go? She asked as they reached James's car, parked 3 blocks away. They'll be watching your place too. James considered their options. I know someone who might help, an old friend who owes me a favor. Dr. Keisha Johnson. She runs a veterinary clinic on the south side. Can we trust her? She has no connection to the department, and she has reason to hate Pierce. Her brother was wrongfully convicted on evidence Pierce planted 10 years ago. Died in prison waiting for an appeal that never came. As they drove, Maya noticed Apollo watching James with unusual intensity. From the back seat, his ears perked forward. He's been acting strange around you today, she observed. He's a smart dog. Probably senses how tense I am. The veterinary clinic was closed when they arrived, but Dr. Johnson answered James's knock, ushering them quickly inside and locking the door behind them. James Rodriguez, she said, eyeing him suspiciously. Never thought I'd see you again, after my brother's case. I was wrong then, Keisha. Too afraid to speak up. I'm trying to make it right now. She turned her attention to Apollo. What's wrong with the dog? He was shot, Maya explained, noticing for the first time the blood matting the fur on Apollo's right shoulder. In the chaos of their escape, she hadn't realized he'd been injured. Bring him to the exam room, Dr. Johnson ordered, professional instincts taking over despite her reservations. The bullet had grazed Apollo's shoulder, tearing through muscle, but missing bone and major blood vessels. As Dr. Johnson cleaned and treated the wound, she listened to their story. So you've got no safe place, no evidence except one backup drive, and the police, the DA, and the commissioner all hunting you, she summarized. With your sister's execution scheduled in 15 days. That about covers it, Maya confirmed. Miserably. Dr. Johnson finished bandaging Apollo's shoulder and stepped back. Well, you can stay here tonight. I have an apartment upstairs. After that, I might know some people who can help. What people? James asked. People who've lost loved ones to Pierce's kind of justice. People who've been gathering evidence for years, waiting for the right moment. She checked her watch. I need to make some calls. You two should rest. The dog needs to stay quiet for at least 24 hours. As Dr. Johnson left them alone in the clinic's break room, James paced nervously. I don't like this, he muttered. Involving more people increases our risk. We don't have much choice, Maya pointed out. Our options are pretty limited, right? Now! Apollo, despite his injury, remained vigilant, his eyes tracking James's movements across the room. When James reached for his phone, the German shepherd growled softly. What's gotten into him? James asked, annoyed. Before Maya could answer, Apollo lunged forward with surprising speed, knocking the phone from James's hand. The device clattered across the floor, its back panel popping open to reveal a small tracking device nestled beside the battery. "What the hell?" Maya breathed, staring at the tracker, then at James. "Did you know about this?" James's expression hardened. "Maya, listen to me." The clinic's back door burst open and Dr. Johnson rushed in. "Police scanner's going crazy. They've tracked you here somehow. We need to go now." Maya grabbed the backup drive and Zora's gun, her mind racing. The tracking device, James's strange behavior, Apollo's persistent wariness around him. It all pointed to one terrible conclusion. "You've been working with them," she accused James as they hurried toward Dr. Johnson's car. "This whole time." "It's not what you think," he began, but Apollo interrupted with a warning growl, positioning himself between James and Maya. "The dog knows," Dr. Johnson said grimly. "They always do." Red and blue lights appeared at the end of the street. Dr. D. Johnson made a split-second decision, grabbing Maya's arm. "This way, through the alley." Maya hesitated, looking back at James. "Why? Zora trusted you." Pain flashed across his face. "They have my kids, Maya. Pierce took them the day after we found the phone. Said they'd be returned when I delivered you and the evidence." His hand moved toward his weapon. "I'm sorry, I don't have a choice." Apollo sprang forward, teeth baring, but James was already drawing his gun. The German Shepherd yelped as the shot grazed his already injured shoulder, but he didn't retreat. Instead, he charged, knocking James off balance long enough for Maya and Dr. Johnson to escape down the alley. "Come on," Dr. Johnson urged, pulling Maya toward a battered van parked behind a neighboring building. "We can't help your dog if we're arrested." Torn, Maya whistled sharply, the recall command Zora had taught Apollo. Moments later, the German Shepherd came limping around the corner, blood darkening his bandages but determination in every line of his body. As they sped away, police sirens converging on the clinic behind them, Maya cradled Apollo's head in her lap, tears streaming down her face. "I can't believe James betrayed us," she whispered. "People will do desperate things to protect their children," Dr. Johnson said, eyes fixed on the road as she navigated a complex route designed to evade pursuit. "The question is, what do we do now?" Dr. Keisha Johnson drove for nearly 2 hours, taking a convoluted route through industrial areas and back roads, before finally pulling into an abandoned-looking warehouse on the outskirts of Atlanta. The building's exterior was weathered and tagged with graffiti, but the security cameras discreetly mounted at strategic points told a different story. "Where are we?" Maya asked, gently helping Apollo from the van. The German Shepherd was alert, despite his injuries, scanning their surroundings with professional intensity. "Somewhere safe," Dr. Johnson replied, approaching what appeared to be a service entrance. She entered a code on a keypad hidden behind a loose brick, and the door unlocked with a metallic click. Inside was a stark contrast to the decaying exterior, a modern, well-equipped operations center with computer stations, a medical area, and a wall covered in photos, documents, and maps connected by red string. Several people looked up as they entered. An older black man in his 60s approached them first, his expression grave but welcoming. "Keisha," he acknowledged, then turned to Maya. "You must be Zora Williams' sister. I'm Reverend Marcus Taylor. Welcome to Justice Chain." "Justice Chain?" Maya echoed, taking in the room and the people watching her with cautious hope. "We're families who've lost loved ones to police corruption," Reverend Taylor explained. "Parents, siblings, children, all of us connected by the same pain. For years we've been gathering evidence against Commissioner Pierce and his network, waiting for the right moment to expose them." "How many cases?" Maya asked, stunned by the wall of victims' photos. 43 confirmed, probably twice that we can't prove yet." The Reverend gestured to a young woman examining Apollo's wound. "That's Shanice, our medical student. She'll take care of your dog." As Shanice redressed Apollo's injury, Maya shared everything they'd discovered: the encrypted phone, Parker's evidence, and James's betrayal. James Rodriguez, a middle-aged woman, said from a computer station, "His children were mysteriously pulled from school yesterday. Official record says they're on vacation." but our sources say they're being held at Pierce's lake house. Pierce's lake house? Maya repeated. Where is that? About an hour north of the city, Reverend Taylor said. Heavily secured, remote location. We've had it under surveillance for months. He keeps trophies from his operations there. Evidence he can use to control his accomplices. Maya's pulse quickened. If we could get to that evidence, it would be suicide, the woman at the computer interrupted. The place has armed guards, security systems, and Pierce himself is often there. We've been waiting for the right opportunity. My sister doesn't have time for waiting, Maya said firmly. Her execution is in 14 days. Apollo, seemingly understanding the urgency, struggled to his feet despite Shanice's protests. Your dog should rest, she insisted. He's not just a dog, Maya replied. He was a police K-9, trained in evidence detection, tracking, and protection, and he seems to understand exactly what's at stake. Reverend Taylor studied Apollo thoughtfully. What exactly was his specialty in the K-9 unit? Primarily narcotics detection, Maya said. But his handler cross-trained him in evidence recovery. He can find anything with human scent, especially if it's been deliberately hidden. A plan began to form. Justice Chain had detailed layouts of Pierce's lake house from their surveillance, including blind spots in the security system. They knew his schedule. He typically spent weekends there, arriving Friday evening. Most importantly, they knew that this particular weekend, he was hosting a fundraiser for the Police Benevolent Association at his main residence, meaning the lake house would be minimally staffed. It's still incredibly dangerous, Reverend Taylor warned. If you're caught, best case scenario is prison. Worst case. I understand the risks, Maya said, but I'm out of options and almost out of time. The plan came together over the next 24 hours. A small team would infiltrate the lake house. Maya, Apollo, despite concerns about his injury, and 2 Justice Chain members with specialized skills, Eric, a former security systems expert, and Letitia, an ex-military woman, whose brother had been framed by Pierce 5 years earlier. Meanwhile, they made one more shocking discovery. Through carefully cultivated sources, Justice Chain learned that Zora's father's death 15 years ago hadn't been random gang violence as officially reported. Thomas Williams had been investigating corruption in the department, the same corruption his daughter had unknowingly picked up the thread of years later. It's generational, Reverend Taylor explained gravely. Pierce has been at this for decades, destroying anyone who gets close to the truth. Your father, your sister, now you. The revelation only strengthened Maya's resolve. Then it's time someone finally stopped him. Friday night arrived, bringing with it a steady rain that would help mask their approach to Pierce's lake house. Dressed in black tactical gear provided by Justice Chain, Maya checked Zora's service weapon one last time, while Eric went over the security bypass plan. We'll have approximately 20 minutes from when I disable the perimeter alarms until the system automatically resets, he explained. That's our window to get in, find what we need, and get out. And if we encounter guards? Letitia asked, checking her own weapon. Non-lethal methods only, Reverend Taylor insisted. We're seeking justice, not revenge. Apollo, wearing a special tactical vest that protected his injured shoulder, stood alertly at Maya's side. Despite veterinary recommendations for rest, the German Shepherd had made it clear he wouldn't be left behind, limping determinedly whenever Maya moved toward the door. He's ready, Maya assured the others, seeing the doubt in their eyes. Zora always said he was the best partner she ever had. They approached the lake house from the water, using a small electric boat with minimal noise signature. The property sprawled across 3 acres, the main house set back from the shore with panoramic views of the lake. Security lights illuminated the manicured grounds, but the heavy rain created deep shadows perfect for their approach. Eric worked quickly at the junction box near the boathouse, bypassing the alarm system. We're live, he whispered into his comm unit. 20 minutes starting now. They moved swiftly across the wet lawn, Apollo leading despite his injury, heading directly for the house's rear entrance. Eric made short work of the electronic lock, and they slipped inside to the kitchen. Security office is down the hall, Letitia murmured, consulting the memorized floor plan. We should disable the interior cameras first. No, Maya said, watching Apollo. The German Shepherd wasn't heading toward the security office, but instead was moving purposefully towards the main living area, nose working the air. Apollo's onto something, let's follow him. The luxurious great room featured vaulted ceilings, a massive stone fireplace, and walls decorated with hunting trophies and expensive artwork. Apollo moved directly to a large painting of Pierce in hunting gear, standing triumphantly over a felled buck. What is it, boy? Maya encouraged as Apollo pawed at the frame. Eric examined the wall around the painting. It's not flush with the wall. There might be something behind it. Carefully, they removed the heavy painting to reveal a wall safe, high-end, digital, with both keypad and biometric lock. We'll never get into that without the combination or Pierce's fingerprint, Letitia said, disappointed. But Apollo wasn't deterred. He sniffed intently around the safe's edges, then moved to a decorative box on a nearby shelf, pawing at it insistently. Inside the box, nestled among fishing lures and hunting memorabilia, was a small notebook. Written in Pierce's handwriting were various codes and combinations, including one labeled Lake Office. Worth a try, Eric said, entering the 6-digit code into the safe's keypad. The safe opened with a soft click, revealing its contents: files, USB drives, a handgun, and several evidence bags containing various items. My God, Maya breathed, scanning the labels. Each evidence bag was marked with a case number and name, victims of Pierce's corruption, their personal items kept as trophies, or insurance. One bag in particular caught her eye, labeled Hargrove RE Primary. Inside was a handgun that matched the ballistics report for the murder weapon, but with one crucial difference. This gun had been modified with a silencer attachment, explaining why no one had reported hearing a shot the night of the murder. Even more damning, the evidence bag contained latex gloves with trace blood spatter and a folded document. Judge Hargrove's drafted testimony for a federal grand jury investigation into police corruption, never delivered. This is it, Maya said, her hands shaking with a mixture of emotion. This proves Pierce killed Hargrove and framed Zora. 12 minutes left, Eric warned, checking his watch. We need to move. They photographed everything, downloaded the contents of the USB drives, and carefully replaced everything except one critical piece of evidence, the actual murder weapon, which they secured for delivery to federal authorities. As they prepared to leave, headlights swept across the front windows. A car was coming up the driveway. We've got company, Letitia hissed. Exit route compromised. They retreated to the kitchen, seeking the rear exit, but voices at the back door stopped them cold. They were trapped. Secondary exit through the boathouse, Eric whispered. We'll have to go through the basement. The narrow stairs to the lower level were dark, forcing them to use small tactical flashlights. The basement was finished as an entertainment area, with a bar, pool table, and home theater. At the far end, a door led to a covered walkway connecting to the boathouse. They had almost reached it when lights flooded the basement. Standing at the bottom of the stairs was James Rodriguez, his expression a mixture of relief and dread. Behind him stood Commissioner Pierce, a pistol pressed to James's back. I told you they'd come for the evidence, Pierce said, smiling coldly at James. You led us right to them, just as planned. Maya, run, James shouted. It's a trap. Pierce's smile vanished. Shut up, Rodriguez. Your usefulness is at its end. To Maya, he continued. Your sister couldn't leave well enough alone. Now her dog led you right into the same trap. Apollo growled, hackles rising despite his injury. Call off your mutt, Pierce ordered, pressing the gun harder against James's spine. Or I'll add another body to tonight's cleanup. Where are James's children? Maya demanded, hand inching toward Zora's service weapon concealed under her jacket. Safe. For now. Pierce's smile returned. Did Rodriguez tell you he's been working? For me all along? Not just since I took his kids, for years. Who do you think helped me set up your sister? James's face crumpled. That's not true. He's lying. Am I? Pierce challenged. Who had access to Zora's car to plant the murder weapon? Who conveniently lost evidence that might have cleared her? Face it, Rodriguez, you've been my man from the beginning. These past weeks were just you playing both sides as usual. The revelation hit Maya like a physical blow. Is that true, James? Before he could answer, the lights went out, plunging the basement into darkness. In the same instant, Apollo launched himself toward Pierce with a furious growl. A shot rang out, followed by a cry of pain, but not from the dog. When emergency lights activated seconds later, Pierce was on the ground, James on top of him, blood spreading across both men's shirts. Apollo stood guard, teeth bared but holding position as trained. "He was going to kill you," James gasped, struggling to maintain his hold on Pierce. "I couldn't let that happen." Letitia and Eric quickly secured Pierce, using zip ties from their gear. The commissioner was alive but wounded in the shoulder. James had deflected his aim at the crucial moment. "Why?" Maya asked James, helping him to his feet. "Were you working for him all along?" "Not willingly," James said, grimacing from his own wound, a bullet graze across his ribs. "He had something on me, a mistake I made years ago. He owned me, used me to keep tabs on Zora, report her movements. But I never thought he'd frame her for murder. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. And these past weeks, helping me find evidence, that was real," James insisted. "When he took my kids, I saw a chance to play double agent, pretend to help him catch you while actually helping you find the evidence. I had to make it convincing." Apollo approached James cautiously, sniffing him intently before sitting beside him. The dog's version of character assessment passed. "We need to move," Eric urged. "Someone will have heard the shot." They made their way to the boathouse, supporting the injured James between them. As they reached the boat, shouting erupted from the main house. Pierce's security team had discovered their boss. "What about Pierce?" Letitia asked. "Let them find him," Maya decided. "The evidence is what matters now. We have what we need to save Zora." As they sped away across the dark lake, rain obscuring their retreat, Maya looked back at the commotion unfolding at the house. They had the murder weapon, the documents proving Pierce's guilt, and the commissioner himself was now wounded and caught with evidence he shouldn't have had. For the first time since Zora's arrest, Maya allowed herself to feel something close, to hope. But the hardest part still lay ahead, getting the evidence to authorities who weren't part of Pierce's corrupt network, and doing it before Zora's execution date. Little did they know that Pierce had one final desperate move to make. One that would put everything they'd fought for at risk. 12 hours until Zora Williams's scheduled execution. The digital clock on the wall of Justice Chain's headquarters seemed to move at double speed, each passing minute bringing her sister closer to death. Maya had barely slept, spending the night organizing their evidence and preparing to present it to Governor Patricia Wilkins, their last best hope for a stay of execution. The governor had the power to delay the execution with a single phone call, but getting to her would be the challenge. "Pierce has already been released from the hospital," Reverend Taylor reported grimly, hanging up his phone. "Official story is that he surprised burglars at his lake house and was injured in the ensuing confrontation. There's an APB out for all of us." "What about the evidence?" Maya asked, checking Apollo's bandages. The German shepherd had finally consented to rest, lying at her feet but still alert, his eyes tracking everyone who moved through the room. "We've sent copies to 3 federal judges, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation and 2 reporters we trust," Letitia confirmed. "But it will take time for them to verify everything and act on it." "Time we don't have," Maya said, staring at the clock. "We need the governor to issue a stay now." James, his ribs bandaged where Pierce's bullet had grazed him, joined them at the table. Many Justice Chain members remained suspicious of him, but Apollo's acceptance had gone a long way toward easing tensions. "The governor is attending a campaign fundraiser at the Peachtree Hotel this morning," he said. "Closed event, heavy security. Getting inside won't be easy." "We don't need to get inside," Maya realized. "We just need to make enough noise outside that she can't ignore us." Within hours, Justice Chain had mobilized its network. Hundreds of supporters gathered outside the Peachtree Hotel, carrying signs demanding justice for Zora Williams and other victims of police corruption. News vans arrived as the protest grew, cameras capturing the dramatic scene as Maya stood at the center with Apollo beside her, both wearing t-shirts emblazoned with Zora's photo and the words, "Innocent on death. Row." "Governor Wilkins," Maya called through a bullhorn as the politician's motorcade arrived. "We have evidence proving my sister was framed. Pierce murdered Judge Hargrove and set her up to take the fall." Security personnel quickly formed a barrier, but the media was already broadcasting live. Governor Wilkins, caught on camera looking directly at Maya, could no longer pretend ignorance of the situation. Inside the hotel, the governor's aides scrambled to control the damage. "The protesters have physical evidence," one reported urgently, "and 3 major networks are covering it live." Governor Patricia Wilkins was in a difficult position. 61 years old and seeking re-election in a tight race, she had cultivated an image as tough on crime while progressive on social issues, a delicate balance. Pierce had been a major supporter, the police unions crucial to her campaign. But if the evidence was legitimate and she ignored it, the political fallout would be devastating. "Bring her in," she finally ordered. "Privately. I'll give her 5 minutes." When Maya was escorted into a service entrance, she brought Apollo and James with her, along with the murder weapon and documentation from Pierce's safe. Governor Wilkins listened impassively as they presented their case, her face revealing nothing. "Even if what you say is true," she said when they finished, "I can't just overturn a jury conviction based on evidence obtained through breaking and entering." "You can issue a temporary stay," James countered. "Give the proper authorities time to investigate." "The police unions would crucify me," Wilkins said bluntly, "and Commissioner Pierce has considerable influence with my donors." "Commissioner, Pierce is a murderer," Maya said, her voice steady despite her desperation. "And right now, he's making calls to his allies, trying to accelerate my sister's execution before this evidence becomes public." The governor checked her watch. "I need to get back to my fundraiser. I'll have my legal team review your materials." "That's not good enough." Maya's composure finally broke. "My sister will be dead in 11 hours. Apollo, sensing her distress, moved closer, pressing against her leg supportively. The governor's eyes fell on the German shepherd, noting his bandaged shoulder and the intensity of his gaze. "That's the dog from the news stories? The one who found the evidence?" Maya nodded. "Apollo was a K-9 officer. He served this state, faithfully for years. Now his handler is about to die for a crime she didn't commit, and he's still fighting for justice." Something in the governor's expression shifted. "Let me make some calls. Wait here." Outside the hotel, the protest continued to grow. Social media was exploding with the story. Hashtags like "Justice for Zora" and "Corrupt Commissioner" trending nationwide. Justice Chain had released selected pieces of evidence online, and journalists were already connecting the dots between Judge Hargrove's murder and other suspicious cases linked to Commissioner Pierce. Inside the prison, Zora sat in the death watch cell, having been moved closer to the execution chamber the previous day. Officer Sarah Donovan, breaking numerous regulations, slipped her a contraband phone. "Your sister's all over the news," Donovan whispered. "Something about evidence your dog found. Everyone's talking about it." Zora's hands trembled as she took the phone. "Can I make a call?" "One. Quick, I'll watch the door." Zora called Maya, and when her sister's voice answered, tears sprang to her eyes. "Maya, is it true? You found something?" "We found everything, Z," Maya said, her own voice choked with emotion. "Apollo led us right to it. Pierce killed Hargrove and framed you. We have the real murder weapon, documents, everything." "Apollo," Zora whispered, a smile breaking through her tears. "Tell him he's the best boy." "You'll tell him yourself," Maya promised. "We're with the governor now. She's making calls." The hope that rose in Zora's chest was almost painful after so many months of despair. "Be careful, Maya. Pierce won't go down without a fight." "I know, Maya's voice cut off as shouting erupted in the background. "Maya!" Zora called urgently. "Maya!" The line went dead. At the hotel, chaos had broken loose. Police in riot gear were dispersing protesters, citing public safety concerns. Inside, the governor's security team was hustling her toward an exit. "What's happening?" Maya demanded as James pulled her and Apollo into a service corridor. "Pierce pulled strings," James explained grimly. "Called in tactical units, claiming terrorist threats at the protest. He's trying to shut this down by force." They reached the parking garage just as Commissioner Pierce himself arrived, flanked by officers loyal to him. Despite his injured shoulder in a sling, he projected authority and rage in equal measure. "Arrest them," he ordered, pointing at Maya and James. "Theft of evidence, breaking and entering, assaulting a police officer, and now creating a public disturbance." "On what grounds?" the governor demanded, surprising everyone by emerging from her vehicle. "Governor, these individuals broke into my private residence, stole personal property, and are now spreading malicious lies," Pierce said smoothly. "I'm simply upholding the law." "By sending riot police against peaceful protesters?" Governor Wilkins raised an eyebrow. "That seems excessive, Commissioner." "Public safety is my primary concern," Pierce insisted. "These people are dangerous. The woman's sister is a convicted murderer, and that dog has already attacked officers." Apollo stood calmly beside Maya, belying Pierce's claims with his disciplined demeanor. The governor studied Pierce thoughtfully. "I've just had a very interesting conversation with the FBI, Commissioner. It seems they've been investigating you for some time. Something about a pattern of suspicious deaths and convictions." Pierce's confidence faltered slightly. "Baseless allegations. I have an exemplary record." "Then you won't mind if I issue a 24-hour stay of execution for Detective Williams while these materials are examined?" The governor's tone made it clear this wasn't a question. "Just to ensure everything is in order." "That would be a serious mistake, Governor," Pierce said, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "Remember who supported your first campaign when no one else would. Remember the files I keep on all my friends." The governor smiled thinly. "Are you threatening me, Commissioner? Because that would be an even more serious mistake." She turned to her chief of staff. "Call the prison. I'm issuing an emergency stay of execution for Zora Williams, effective immediately." Pierce's face contorted with rage. He reached inside his jacket with his good arm, and several things happened simultaneously. Apollo launched forward with a warning bark. James shouted, "Gun!" and tackled Maya to the ground, and the governor's security detail drew their weapons. In the confusion, Pierce slipped away, disappearing into a stairwell as officers hesitated, unsure who to follow. "Secure the governor," James shouted, helping Maya to her feet. "Pierce is escaping." "Let the police handle Pierce," the governor's head of security ordered. "Ma'am, we need to get you to a secure location." But Maya wasn't listening. "He's going after Zora," she realized with sudden clarity. "If he can't stop the stay, he'll make sure she doesn't live to benefit from it." The prison. Pierce still had allies there. If he reached it before the official stay paperwork? "We need to get to Georgia State Penitentiary," Maya told James. "Now." As they raced toward James's car, Apollo limping but determined by their side, Maya's phone rang. "Officer Ray," Donovan calling from Zora's contraband phone. "Something's happening," the prison guard said without preamble. "They're accelerating the execution schedule, claiming security concerns, moving it up to noon." Maya checked her watch. 11:15 a.m. "The governor just issued a stay." "No official paperwork has arrived," Donovan said urgently. "And the warden just got a call from someone high up. They're prepping the lethal injection already." "Stall them," Maya pleaded. "We're on our way." James drove like a man possessed, weaving through traffic with the skill of his police training, while Maya called everyone she could think of: Justice Chain, the governor's office, journalists covering the protest. Apollo sat tensely in the back seat, as if he understood exactly what was at stake. At the prison, Zora was being led to the execution chamber, her request to wait for the governor's stay ignored. "I'm innocent," she told the solemn-faced prison chaplain walking beside her. "I need you to make sure people know that." "God knows the truth, my child," he replied helplessly. The execution chamber was clinical and impersonal. A gurney with restraints, IV stands prepared with the lethal chemicals, and a small observation room separated by reinforced glass where witnesses would normally sit. Today, however, the observation room remained empty, another irregularity in a process rushed beyond all protocol. As the technicians secured her to the gurney, Zora closed her eyes and thought of Apollo, his loyalty, his intelligence, his unwavering faith in her. Somehow it helped her find peace in these final moments. Outside the prison, Maya, James, and Apollo arrived to find a scene of confusion. News vans crowded the entrance, reporters broadcasting live updates on the stay of execution and the allegations against Commissioner Pierce. Prison staff hurried in and out, some clearly distressed by the conflicting orders they were receiving. "Let us in," Maya shouted at the guards blocking the gate. "The governor issued a stay." "We have orders not to admit anyone until the situation is resolved," the senior guard replied stonily. James recognized the man. "Officer Ramirez, you know me. We've worked together for years. There's an innocent woman about to die in there." Ramirez hesitated, then keyed his radio. "Sir, Detective Rodriguez is at the gate with Williams's sister. They're claiming the governor issued a stay." The response came immediately. "No one enters. Security lockdown in effect." Inside the execution chamber, a doctor was inserting the IV into Zora's arm when Officer Donovan burst in. "Stop the execution," she shouted, brandishing her phone. "The governor's order just came through officially. I have it right here." The warden, who had been observing from the corner, stepped forward. "Officer Donovan, you are relieved of duty. Security, escort her out." "Check your own damn email," Donovan insisted as two guards moved to remove her. "It's official state business." The commotion bought precious seconds. Outside, the situation was escalating. More police had arrived, along with representatives from the governor's office carrying official paperwork. Media cameras captured everything, as Maya desperately tried to reach someone inside who could stop the execution. And then, Apollo took matters into his own paws. The German shepherd suddenly broke away from Maya, darting between the legs of distracted guards and through a service entrance that had been momentarily left unattended. Before anyone could stop him, he was inside the prison complex, racing through corridors he somehow knew by instinct, following the scent of the person he loved most in the world. Alarms blared as security personnel spotted the dog on surveillance cameras. "Intruder in Section C," a voice announced over the intercom. "Animal loose in the building." In the execution chamber, the doctor had inserted the IV and was preparing the first injection when the door burst open again, this time revealing Commissioner Pierce, his face flushed with exertion and rage, his arm still in a sling. "Proceed immediately," he ordered the execution team. "Security situation requires acceleration." The warden looked uncertain. "Sir, we've received conflicting reports about a stay." "I am still the police commissioner," Pierce snapped. "And I am telling you there is an imminent threat to this facility. Complete the procedure now." The doctor hesitated, syringe in hand, looking between Pierce and the warden. Zora, strapped to the gurney, could only watch as her fate hung in the balance. Then came the sound of nails scrabbling on the polished floor outside, followed by a familiar bark that made Zora's heart leap. "Apollo?" she whispered in disbelief. The German shepherd burst through the door that Pierce had left ajar, zeroing in immediately on the man who had framed his beloved handler. With a growl that seemed to come from the depths of his soul, Apollo launched himself at Pierce, knocking him to the ground. "Get this animal off me!" Pierce shouted, struggling to reach for his concealed weapon with his good arm. The distraction was all Officer Donovan needed. Breaking free from the guards restraining her, she rushed to the doctor. "The governor's stay is official. Check the computer." The warden, finally sensing that something was deeply wrong, moved to his terminal and logged in. There it was, the official order, time-stamped 15 minutes earlier. He looked up at Pierce, then at Zora, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Stand down," he ordered the execution team. "The procedure is suspended by order of the governor." Pierce, still struggling with Apollo, managed to reach his gun. "I'll kill this mutt. Then I'll finish what I started with Williams." Before he could fire, James Rodriguez appeared in the doorway, his own weapon drawn. "Drop it, Commissioner. It's over." Behind him stood Maya, tears streaming down her face as she saw her sister alive on the gurney. Federal agents followed, moving quickly to secure Pierce and retrieve his weapon. "You're under arrest, Commissioner," the lead agent announced, "for the murder of Judge Richard Hargrove, obstruction of justice, conspiracy, and about 24 other charges we'll sort out later." As the medical staff removed Zora's restraints and the IV from her arm, Apollo finally released his hold on Pierce, trotting over to place his head on her chest, his entire body wiggling with joy. "Good boy," Zora whispered, burying her face in his fur. "The best boy." The countdown had reached 0, but instead of an ending, it marked a new beginning. The truth, so long buried, had finally come to light, thanks to a sister who never gave up, a partner who found his courage, and a German shepherd who followed his heart to uncover the evidence that changed everything. Do you believe Apollo is one of the greatest heroes in the history of justice? What would you do if you were in Zora's position, wrongfully convicted and facing execution? Comment below with your thoughts on this incredible story of loyalty and perseverance. And if you were moved by Apollo's unwavering dedication to his handler, hit that like button and subscribe for more true stories of animals who changed lives forever. The shocking conclusion is coming up next. The Georgia State Penitentiary visitors room had never been so crowded. 6 months after the dramatic stay of execution, Zora Williams sat at a small table, Apollo at her feet, receiving a constant stream of visitors and well-wishers. The German shepherd, fully recovered from his injuries, watched each newcomer with alert interest, occasionally accepting gentle pats from those his handler welcomed. "Detective Williams," Governor Patricia Wilkins greeted her, extending her hand across the table. "I wanted to personally deliver the news. Your official exoneration has been signed. You'll be processed for release tomorrow morning." Zora took the governor's hand, emotion making it difficult to speak. "Thank you, Governor." "Don't thank me," Wilkins said frankly. "Thank your sister, your partner, and especially this extraordinary dog. They never stopped fighting for you." The evidence, recovered from Commissioner Pierce's lake house, had been overwhelming. Forensic analysis confirmed that the handgun found in the hidden safe was indeed the weapon that killed Judge Hargrove, with Pierce's fingerprints preserved under the grip despite his attempts to wipe it clean. Judge Hargrove's drafted grand jury testimony revealed a conspiracy reaching back decades, corrupt judges, prosecutors, and police officers working together to protect powerful interests while framing innocent people. The morning after Pierce's arrest, federal agents had conducted pre-dawn raids across Atlanta, arresting 12 officials implicated in the conspiracy, including District Attorney Elizabeth Chen. The investigation quickly expanded beyond Georgia, as connections to similar corruption in neighboring states emerged. For Zora, vindication had come at a terrible cost. Nearly 2 years of her life lost behind bars, her reputation destroyed, and the trauma of coming within minutes of execution. But as she looked around at the people who had fought for her, she felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. Maya sat beside her, holding her hand tightly. "I never doubted you. Not for a second." "I know," Zora said softly. Apollo never doubted either. At the sound of his name, the German shepherd raised his head, brown eyes fixed adoringly on Zora's face. James Rodriguez stood awkwardly near the door, still uncomfortable in Zora's presence despite his role in her salvation. His children, safely recovered after Pierce's arrest, clung to his legs. "James," Zora called, gesturing him closer. "We need to talk." He approached hesitantly. "Zora, I'm so sorry. For everything. I should have been braver sooner." "You were there when it counted," she said simply. "Apollo seems to have forgiven you. That's good enough for me." The German shepherd, as if understanding, stood and walked to James, sniffing his hand before allowing the detective to pet him. A gesture of reconciliation that brought tears to James's eyes. 1 month later, construction workers excavating at a development site near one of Pierce's former properties made a grim discovery: a mass grave containing 5 bodies. Forensic analysis identified them as witnesses who had disappeared over the years, all connected to cases involving Pierce, and his allies. Among them was William Parker, the homeless veteran who had tried to help Maya and James, his body showing signs of torture before his execution. The discovery provided closure for 5 more families and added multiple murder charges to the already extensive case against Pierce. The former commissioner, denied bail and held in federal custody, maintained his innocence despite the mounting evidence. His trial was scheduled for the following year, though few doubted the outcome. Meanwhile, Zora had been invited to testify before a congressional hearing on racial bias in law enforcement and prosecutorial misconduct. The room fell silent as she described her experience. From decorated detective to death row inmate, all because she had come too close to exposing corruption. "The system didn't just fail me," she concluded, Apollo sitting attentively beside her witness chair. "It failed every person convicted based on evidence fabricated by Commissioner Pierce and his network. It failed every family who lost a loved one to this conspiracy. And it continues to fail countless others whose cases don't have a dedicated sister and a determined dog fighting for them." Her testimony, broadcast nationally, sparked renewed debate about the death penalty, prosecutorial oversight, and the need for independent review of convictions where official misconduct was suspected. Public pressure led to the formation of a special task force to review every case touched by Pierce or his known associates. 6 months after her congressional testimony, Zora stood in the Georgia state capitol as Governor Wilkins, re-elected by a comfortable margin after her handling of the Pierce scandal, signed the Hargrove-Williams Act into law. The legislation created robust protections for whistleblowers within law enforcement, established an independent oversight commission for police departments statewide, and funded reviews of potentially tainted convictions. "This won't bring back the years I lost," Zora told reporters afterward, Apollo faithfully at her side wearing a special vest emblazoned with Justice K9 on its side. "But it might prevent others from losing years, or lives, to corruption and bias." The settlement from her wrongful conviction lawsuit had left Zora financially secure, but money couldn't heal all wounds. Night terrors still plagued her, the memory of the execution chamber never far from her mind. Yet she had found purpose in her trauma, establishing a specialized K9 training program focused specifically on evidence detection for wrongful conviction cases. "Dogs don't have biases," she explained to the first class of handlers and their K9 partners. "They don't care about politics or power. They follow sense, find evidence, and reveal truths that humans might miss or choose to ignore." Apollo, now semi-retired but still active as a demonstration dog, showed the trainees how to search for hidden evidence, his movements still precise despite the gray beginning to show around his muzzle. 1 year to the day after her near execution, Zora and Apollo stood outside another prison as Gerald Washington, a black man who had spent 22 years on death row for a murder he didn't commit, walked free. His case had been among the first reviewed under the new law, with evidence of prosecutorial misconduct linked directly to Pierce's network. Washington knelt to Apollo's level, tears streaming down his weathered face. "Thank you," he said gently, stroking the German shepherd's head. "Without you, I'd have died in there," Apollo responded with a dignified wag of his tail, accepting the gratitude with the same steady presence that had never wavered through Zora's ordeal. As television cameras captured the emotional moment, Zora reflected on the journey that had brought them here, from the night of her arrest to this day of redemption, not just for her but for others trapped in the same corrupt system. The conspiracy had been vast and powerful, reaching into every corner of Atlanta's justice system and beyond. The final count showed 47 wrongful convictions directly tied to Pierce's network, 17 deaths either ordered or directly caused by the commissioner, and hundreds of cases tainted by associated misconduct. Pierce himself had finally broken under the weight of evidence, accepting a plea deal that spared him the death penalty in exchange for information about every case he had manipulated and every official he had corrupted. He would spend the rest of his life in federal prison, his empire of corruption dismantled piece by piece. For Zora and Apollo, the work continued. Each case reopened, each innocent person freed, each corrupt official exposed was another step toward healing the wounds inflicted by injustice. The German shepherd who had once howled outside a prison digging frantically at a grave that held buried evidence, now sat proudly beside his handler as they built a legacy of truth and redemption. "What does justice look like to you now?" a journalist asked Zora after Washington's release ceremony. She looked down at Apollo, the faithful companion who had never lost faith, then at her sister Maya, who had never stopped fighting, and finally, at the newly freed man embracing his family for the first time in decades. "Justice looks like this," she said simply. "Truth revealed, lives restored, and systems change so the same injustice can't happen again." As they walked away from the prison, Apollo pressed close to Zora's side, his steady presence a reminder of the unbreakable bond that had saved her life and changed the system forever. Behind them, the gates closed on an empty cell. One more person freed from the chains of injustice, one more family made whole again. The German shepherd looked up at his handler, brown eyes filled with the same unwavering loyalty that had led him to dig at a grave, find a buried phone, and race through a prison to stop an execution. Zora knelt beside him, wrapping her arms around his neck. "We did it, boy," she whispered. "We really did it." Apollo's tail wagged once, twice, 3 times. A simple gesture that somehow conveyed everything that needed to be said. Zora Williams' story teaches us powerful truths about justice and resilience in America. When systems designed to protect us become corrupted, the vulnerable suffer most, especially those facing racial discrimination. Yet this story reminds us that truth has extraordinary power to overcome even the most entrenched corruption. Apollo's unwavering loyalty demonstrates that sometimes our greatest allies come in unexpected forms. While human institutions failed Zora, the pure instinct and devotion of her German shepherd revealed what humans had deliberately hidden. This speaks to the importance of trusting our instincts when confronting injustice. Maya's persistence shows that refusing to accept official narratives can literally save lives. One person's determination to question authority and seek truth can spark movements that transform broken systems. Most importantly, this case illustrates how racism operates not just through overt hatred, but through institutional power structures that can weaponize the justice system against those who challenge them. The Hargrove-Williams Act represents how personal trauma can be transformed into systemic change when we refuse to let injustice have the final word. The path to justice is rarely straight, often dangerous, and requires both courage and community. But when truth finally emerges, healing becomes possible, not just for individuals, but for society itself. What do you think about this incredible story of justice, loyalty, and perseverance? Has an animal ever shown you extraordinary intelligence or devotion? Comment below with your experiences. If this story of Apollo's heroism touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share with others who appreciate the special bond between humans and animals. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey, and we look forward to bringing you more extraordinary true stories in the future.